Remove and replace the upper intake manifold in your 4th gen Maxima. Well, first step you're going to want to do is obviously remove the factory air box assembly over here. So you want a flathead screwdriver or an 8mm socket or nut driver. Loosen this clamp at the throttle body. Then take some pliers and remove all these breather hoses here. Go to the front valve cover. And the one that goes to the IACV back here. And then this little vacuum hose right here. And unplug the mass airflow sensor. Unclip the airbox clips. You may have to disconnect the wiring harness from a clip next to the mass airflow sensor. Then you just squeeze the pliers, pop it out, then pop this all out. If you have a 95 or 96, you'll have an IoT sensor right here. You can actually see where it's kind of molded to fit in there. 97 through 99, the IoT is in the snorkel down here. You can actually see the IoT sensor in this photo. Right there. It's right next to the ABS modulator. So once you have factory airbox and everything out of the way, while you still got your pliers out, go ahead and pull off the brake booster vacuum hose. And if these are stuck on there, just give them a twist like I just did there, and they should come off. Come on. There we go. Just tuck that out of the way. Now the upper intake manifold can look like a daunting thing to pull off because you have all this mess over here. It's really not that bad. The hardest part about it is probably the 2 support brackets in the rear and the coolant hose that runs from the throttle body back to through the EGR pipe. So next I'm going to pull off all this evap equipment up here. Now you could leave these on here and just disconnect the hoses. I find removing these gives you a lot easier access to the rear support bolts. Gives you a lot easier access to the support bolts in the rear of the manifold. Oh, you don't need that. Actually, I need to take off these two. That guy. I'm going to remove the these 3 are 12mm head nuts. Also going to remove the 2 10mm head bolts over here. Before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and see the wiring harness is clipped on here. Take some pliers and squeeze that tab. Wants to. There we go. Now I'm just going to disconnect the rest of the engine harness here where it hangs over the intake manifold. You have 2 plugs in your TPS, unless your 95 Cali spec, I believe, only had 1 connector. And 1 here for EGR temp sensor, and 3, 1 for the main IACV stepper motor, and then these 2 idle up solenoids, AC and power steering. And you can see these are all color coded. 2 idle up solenoids are pink and purple, so just go back to whatever color came off. Unplug this guy, and unplug all your coils. Probably have to take this brace off unless you can get to the... Okay, you can. Removal of all these little push tabs is the same, just kind of squeeze and pull. That's all loose. Next, I'm going to remove the throttle cable so I can get this harness up and out of the way. Now you don't want to touch these adjustment nuts right here. Leave them like they are. You'll just unbolt the whole bracket that they sit in. To remove them from the throttle body, pull them back and pull the cable so it lines up with a slit and a drum right there, and it just slides out. And the same way, that one is the cruise control cable on the outside. On the inside here is the actual throttle cable. It may be a little corroded in there. There we go. Right, that's done. Now to remove the bracket the cable sit on, there's two 10mm head bolts. So you got those out. The whole throttle cable. Throttle and cruise control cable assembly just comes free. All I have to do is unclip throttle cable retainer back here, it's like you did when you do your rear spark plugs, and them cables right out of the way. And now we're about ready to flip this whole harness out of the way. Come over here, and there's one push clip, I believe. Yep, right there. Actually, yeah. Disconnect that rear O2 sensor also. There we go. Just pull the harness up and out of the way. Now you will need to remove this bracket here. It's got all sorts of stuff on it. Just remove this one bolt. It's also one less thing to catch yourself on. We worked around the engine bay here. Unclip that. That, and then you can just kind of tuck it off to the side. Then I'm going to go back to removing these evap components here. Remove this evap purge hose. There we go. And you have two lines here, one vacuum line. Yep. Disconnect the evap line here. And these are all just normal spring hose clamps. Now with all those disconnected, you just pull this evap equipment out and set it off to the side. You can see how much more space we have in this area here now. At this point, I like to take off PCV valve and that whole bracket right there just to get out of the way. There's more 10mm head bolts. Basically, while doing this job, I like to remove everything that I have to reach over to get to the rear of the manifold. I just find it to be so much easier that way and less painful. There's a lot of things sticking up on this manifold that you catch the wrong way and they will hurt you pretty bad. So I just like to strip it all the way down. And I find that makes it so much easier. Clip this PCV hose back here. Right off on this side. Hopefully the PCV ICV valve will come right out. There we go. Put that to the side. Just pull this ICV breather off. Alright, you see how quickly we lose all that huge mess from on top of the manifold. And now it looks nice and clean. So next up, there are two coolant lines that go to the throttle body. And I believe 2 or 3 more vacuum lines. Oh, it looks like maybe just one more. There's another vacuum line over here right next to the throttle body. Going into this, you should be prepared to replace some vacuum hose. Whether you rip it or whether it's already deteriorated. Vacuum leaks are not a good thing. See, that one just completely tore apart and I pulled it off. So from here, with the vacuum hose is disconnected, that one too. With the vacuum hose is disconnected and your wiring harness off, all the evap equipment, everything off the top. You want to pull all your coil packs out. I'm not going to go over that because that was in the rear spark plug video. You're going to pull your coil packs out, and then all you have left is 2 water hoses and the EGR guide tube. That's just 2 12mm head bolts in the bag, and then those 2 support bracket bolts back here also. Those may be tricky to get on camera. I'll probably have to show you off the car because there really isn't space back there to get in there and show it. And of course all the bolts down. Alright, I get these rear support brackets. I like just use a long flex head ratchet and a short 12mm socket. Get this out the way. Go in here, and the first one you can feel is right next to the heater hose, where they go into the heater core on the car, or on the firewall. Just have to be careful not to apply too much force to there, you'll break the heater core, and that's not the most fun of jobs. I find it easier to actually put the socket on that bolt first and then attach your ratchet to the socket. Otherwise it's hard to find just the right angle to get in there. A flex head 12mm ratchet wrench really helps on this job. Actually, well, flex head ratchet wrenches about in pretty much every job, but they're really nice for doing these support bracket bolts. Not strictly necessary, just saves a lot of time. It's been such a long time since I've done this. In this case, a 1/4 inch long flex head ratchet with a short 12mm. It's perfect for getting on that bracket bolt. There it is. See a little bastard back there. On the other side, you notice the heater hoses are attached to a bracket that's kind of in the way. You can work around it. Get that bracket bolt out. Now we have to get to this EGR guide tube, which again I can't show you in the car. This should also be 2 12mm head bolts, I believe. Yep. So, 3/8 to break them free. They can be kind of tough. You feel them, they'll be just to the left of that support bracket back there. And then bolts it up. You can feel them, you can tell the difference because their bolts there are rustier. You know, they're part of the exhaust system. You can see right there, the long spacer on it too. Now this connection right here for the EGR temp sensor, if you can't get that unplugged from this little, or disconnected from this little bracket right here in the ICV, you can also just reach down and take out one 10mm head bolt. Holds this bracket in place. You're doing this because the EGR guide tube with the temp sensor screwed into it will stay with the engine when you pull the intake off. Just let that dangle down there somewhere. And the only things really left are the two coolant lines. All your bolts up here, and I still have to remove my coil packs. Alright, now with the coil packs out, I'm going to be removing all these 12mm head nuts and bolts along the front of the upper intake manifold. Now, sometimes these nuts on the sides will come out with the stud, sometimes they'll come out just as nuts. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Don't be worried if it starts pulling a stud out on you too. And you see these are special bolts too. They have this larger unthreaded shank right there. Okay, goes loose, and you can see the intake manifold is free. The trickier part for most people is getting to these coolant lines. Normally I'd pinch these off so they wouldn't get coolant everywhere, but this car also has a cracked radiator and has no coolant in it, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. You got one right at the front of the throttle body, right here. It goes directly up into that this fast idle device right here, which is coolant controlled. I've had several Maximas where I've just pulled, completely removed all that coolant stuff from the throttle body, deleted this fast idle thermal valve right here. I've never had an idling issue, cold, hot, whatever, even down into the probably 10 or 15 degree range. So yeah, some people like to think that you pulled it off and all of a sudden your car can't hold an idle. Worth the damn. Personally, I've noticed absolutely zero difference. But again, it doesn't get around zero, anywhere near zero around here usually, so I couldn't say for a really cold location, but personally I've noticed no issues with it. There we go, that's one. And there's another one on the other side of the throttle body. It goes back around to that EGR, where the EGR pipe comes in. I'm going to go ahead and remove that too, just because it's easier this way. Then you can see, just start pulling up with the manifold and see where it's getting hung up on. You can see I just had the whole intake manifold propped up on the side so I can get in there and get to that fucking hose. Oh, yeah, she's fine. See just how long that takes, the proper tools. Simple pair of 90-degree pliers. That would have been done in 30 seconds. But dealing with what I got at the fucking house, so. Let me see, once you get that off, intake manifold just pulls right off. If it doesn't, then you forgot something. You can see here. Here's the EGR guide tube. This one's about plugged up. There is one of your support brackets right there. Your other one is right there. Yeah, that's what it looks like without the intake manifold. So now that you've got it off, you can it'd be a very good time to do your valve cover gaskets. You don't have to pull it back off at a later time. But I guess I'll take you down there and show you what the intake manifold looks like on the bench, so you can see where all the bolts and everything are. Right here you can see the intake manifold off the car. So your throttle body here, idle air control. There's an EGR passage. As you can see, this one is about completely plugged up. It's a great time to clean out the EGR guide tube, EGR passage in the intake manifold, clean out the IACV, and clean out the throttle body. You can see the hoses that go through that EGR area. I recommend taking this one off at not at the intake manifold side, but at the coolant pipe side, because it's easier to get to, especially if you have 90-degree needle nose pliers. Makes it really easy. Now I pulled this guy off just because it runs underneath and through some other hoses, and I didn't feel like fighting with that. Some throttle bodies have a vacuum on here, some don't. You just have this plug. I'm not really sure what the difference is, but it's something to be aware of. You have here, that's your evap purge line. Here's another vacuum line, and another vacuum line. Here's that first coolant hose I pulled off of the throttle body. You can see here, there's your fast idle thermal valve right here. On the back side, you can see, again, there's your EGR right next to the IACV. That's your left side bracket bolt and your right side bracket bolt. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Clean it up and put it back in. Alright, now reinstalling the intake manifold. I won't be showing how to put those water hoses back on the back of the intake manifold, because I've gone ahead and just deleted the whole system. It works much easier this way, much quicker to pull the manifold out. So what I'm going to do is take the manifold and set it down. Of course, you're going to have to fight, get it behind the brackets and the EGR guide tube and all that while you're trying to set the manifold down. First thing I like to do is take these manifold bracket bolts and get them started before you do anything else. Once those two are in, put the EGR guide tube bolts in. And once those are on, now I'll take the bolts and nuts and then the front of the intake manifold and torque them down. And after you're done torquing these down, then you can do the manifold bracket bolts in the rear and the EGR guide tube bolts. And once those are done, go ahead and torque down manifold bracket bolts. And now your EGR guide tube bolts. And once those are done, I'm going to put on the PCV valve and bracket. And while I'm back here, we'll put the red booster back in line. this harness back over. Alright, just go underneath those. So before the harness, I'm just gonna put the throttle cable bracket back on. Put the throttle and cruise cables back into the throttle body. And we'll put the harness through. And put on that throttle cable retaining bracket. And put my coils back in. Clip this harness back in. Put this bracketry over here back together. Really should do that before putting that harness back over, but you can still get it in place. Plug the rear O2 sensor back in. Put the harness back down. We're ready to put the emissions components back on over here. Alright, start plugging things back in. Move that purge hose back up. And then plug the ICV back in. And our temp sensor. Put it back together. Start hooking up all your other vacuum lines and hoses. And get everything nice once over. Just make sure you've plugged all your vacuum lines and hoses and everything back in. You've hooked up your throttle cables, all your brackets are bolted down tightly, everything, all the connectors you can see are plugged in. Go ahead and install this intake plumbing. Plug your mass airflow back in. Turn up the hose clamp over here. It's your breather tube from the front valve cover. Stick it on that resonator box. And then get your ISCV tube. That up. And this vacuum line. And I believe that's it. Double check, make sure you have no extra nuts and bolts anywhere. It's amazing, I'm not missing any. I've got nothing extra. That's how you really want every job to finish up. So again, just Do a once over, double check everything, make sure everything's in place. Now you're ready to start it up and see if it runs.